Hello and welcome to the Monocle Weekly. This time I had the pleasure to welcome to our studio British singer-songwriter Shura, which Monocle Radio listeners will recognize from our playlist. She's back with a new album, her first since 2019. I Got Too Sad for My Friends, which maintains her usual ethereal vocals, the synths, and this time it also packs an emotional punch. Here is Shura with more.
Well, I think firstly, I would say that in general, I like to take my time. I think even when the first record, Touch, came out in 2014, and it wasn't until 2016 that I had an album, and we even made a website called Has Shura Finished Her Album Yet.com. So it became a bit of a thing, but with this record specifically, lots of reasons. I think I was halfway through touring the second record when that all had to sort of overnight come to a halt, and I think I'm very I work in phases. So I'm writing, I'm recording, I'm touring, and I rarely sort of mix those phases. I hear all the time about artists who write on tour, and I'm so jealous. I'm like, that would be so useful.
Doing two things at the same time.
Yeah, two things at the same time. Can you imagine? So I think I wasn't really ready to kind of re-enter writing when I probably needed to. And kind of also life was, for all of us, I think I wasn't really experiencing anything, and I certainly wasn't experiencing, it was unique to all of us, but it wasn't unique in that I would just be writing about being stuck playing video games in my apartment, and that's what everyone else is doing, and I don't know how much we will want to visit an entire album about that. So yeah, it was kind of a mix of things.
During this period, were you mainly in New York, right?
Mainly, and then I moved back. Well, I didn't really move back. I came back to London to do some bits and then realised I couldn't return. So my partner had to move when we finally decided to come back and be in London. She had to move and pack all of our belongings, not just hers. It was a kind of mad endeavour.
Well, let's talk about the new album. Even the name of the album, I Got Too Sad for My Friends. it shows that this album, there's quite an emotional heft to it as well. And of course, I've listened to the whole album. I think some songs are very Shura for those who know your music, but some others are quite different. I do think this album, there's a certain level of depth and sadness as well, if we can say that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's also for those fans that, are expecting a Nothing's Real too, and they do exist, and they existed before I put out Forever. It's not that record. I think there's treats in there for people who love that era of mine, so it's not a completely I don't care about you. There's sort of nuggets of fun. But I really I think the theme for my life and this record was just, I don't want to do anything the same way, because I don't really see the point, and I don't really see how I could grow. And even if at the end of it I sort of ended up with something maybe I didn't like, I thought it was important to try approaching it in a different way. And luckily I love it, and I think that's always the only thing that you can sort of hope for when you embark upon a creative process, is that sort of by the end of it you like the thing you've made. And it's complicated, there are periods where you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? The valley of despair definitely happens when you're creating, but no, I'm really proud of this record.
But even the production, one thing that is still there, talking about the fans, is the crystal clear vocals. That's the beauty that's still in there. The lyrics might be a little bit more, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's a really internalized, I say that, but then Nothing's Real was all kind of very internal and anxious, but it felt kind of like a teenage approach to sort of those topics. And I think, one thing that I will always do is kind of, I just love production, and I love that process and adding all these details and layers. And I think for those people who enjoy that aspect of my music, the detail and the kind of sonic landscape and fabric of it, will find that this is really rich, even if the textures are different.
Exactly, because sure, there's a lot of the electropop perhaps that you're known for, but you've added a lot of elements of kind of a little bit of folk, a little bit of Americana as well. So tell us, was that that kind of music that you always listened to it, or was it a complete departure for you?
I think a lot of Americana and kind of chamber pop, it's part of the fabric of, you know, we're very familiar with it because it's played so a lot. And I think artists like Paul Simon, for instance, I was listening to a lot of those kind of classic records when I was writing this, and I think they were just very comforting to me. And I feel like I can't, you know, speak about that without mentioning also Cassandra Jenkins, who features on Richardson, but her record, An Overview on Phenomenal Nature, was a record that kind of really got hold of me in a way that a record hadn't for a really long time, and sort of listening to her music and the fact that it felt comforting and like something I could crawl up into, I think was something I really needed, and also felt like I needed to explore in my own music.
And in Richardson, I think that song is precisely about your time in New York, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful song.
Yeah, about wandering around in circles more or less whilst listening to her record and thinking about kind of, I mean, it's about, I keep joking that it's about walking, but it's also very much about kind of bigger questions. And it was sort of spurred by a conversation I'd had with my dad, where he had told me that he had very long conversations with his mum in his dreams, even though she'd long since passed, and he would sort of update her about his life and us, because we never got to meet her. And I was just so sort of struck by how sad and comforting that was, that one day when my parents are long gone, I can still hang out with them in my dreams, and sort of just thinking about how lovely that would be, although I would prefer for them to be here, of course. So it was just, catastrophizing whilst walking in New York.
And talking about that sadness, do you think you got too sad for your friends? I mean, you do actually quote the title of the album on the song World's Worst Girlfriend, right? But there's some humor in it perhaps there as well.
Well, I think there has to be with a title like World's Worst Girlfriend as well. I think that's how I felt, but it wasn't really the reality. And I think that's part of the sort of almost the sadness, but also the comedy of it. I think when we're sad, we often retreat ourselves without realising. So as much as it's not really a criticism of my friends even, I think I was retreating from them because I wanted to spare them my misery and I felt like a burden. And so I think that's what's sort of interesting about it, is that we often, when we're going through a difficult period, rather than reaching out for help, we just sort of dive further inwards.
Absolutely. I want to talk about the artwork for the album as well. Is it true, were you inspired by The Little Prince, which is amazing, right? It's an icon.
I am ashamed to say I'd never read it.
You never read it?
I'd never read it. When I was kind of contemplating the artwork, my partner, who's French, said, you should read The Little Prince. And I was aware of it. I knew, I even knew the imagery. It's so famous. It's sort of inescapable, and yet somehow I had not read it. So I went to the local bookstore, picked up a copy, and I was so struck by it. I just was like, this is not a children's book. Like it is, and it isn't. And I just love that image of him standing on top of a mountain on planet Earth and not being able to see a single human being. And that really resonated with me, because at some points in this period of time that I wrote the record, I really did sort of feel like I was all alone on a mountaintop, being like, oh my God, the world is so big, where is everyone? Like, I need something that I'm alone. Yeah, the loneliness of sadness really struck me. So yeah, when I was also playing this very good game called Baldur's Gate 3, and there was kind of medieval Dungeons and Dragons aspects. So it's sort of a mesh of this nerdy thing that I was sort of doing, and this book that sort of really, really struck me. And I wanted to be sort of alone in a landscape you didn't really know where it was, and protecting all these bits that are not really worth protecting. Like, who cares about my arms? It probably should cover my tummy or something useful.
It's funny you mentioned video games. I actually didn't know this. You are a big video game fan, and kind of, do you like that world of fantasy almost in a way? So your hat, actually, I have to tell our listeners, is Magic, right?
Yeah, Magic the Gathering.
Magic the Gathering.
I know, I'm outing
Is it okay
myself.
if I said that?
Yeah, I'm outing myself as a mega nerd. No, I've always played video games, but I've never been interested that much in fantasy. I was always kind of science fiction girl. And I even said to, I have a kind of Discord server, which I kind of made for fans of mine who were watching me on Twitch during the pandemic. And I even remember saying to them, I don't really like fantasy, when they were recommending games to me. It's just not for me. So they are all now taking the piss out of me because they're like, wait, I thought you said you didn't like fantasy, and now you played this game and you're obsessed with it, and now your whole album campaign is you dressed as a kind of gnome bard knight thing. And it's as much a surprise to me as anyone, but I am now able to really enjoy fantasy as a genre. I just think I needed to unlock it for myself. Is that passion for video games and other things help your music somehow, or is it a place where you can, I don't know, relax? It's just a hobby. Well, relaxing helps the music, definitely. So I think, having a world I can sort of dive into where I'm not thinking about a mix or lyrics is amazing. But no, it definitely does inspire me. I think back to the first album, and White Light was half inspired by a video game character I fell in love with in Mass Effect 3. And certainly the opening to that track musically was hugely inspired by the soundtrack to The Last of Us. So I think there are things in games that definitely feed into my music. I do like, I don't know about you, but I like, those 80s games, like even Mario. I like the sounds, the electronic sounds. They're amazing. I think it's fantastic, it's, I would listen to it the whole day. I actually did a mix once of kind of video game soundtracks, and it's really fun. I might ask you to send me the link for that. I will, I've got it. Coming back to the album, I forgot, one of my favorite tracks, which is a single from the album, is Recognize. And that's why I said in the beginning of the interview, they're sad, emotional, heft, but it feels to me that it's a very dreamy, it's a beautiful song. What can you tell us about Recognize? I think it was after I'd written it, and it was very kind of, it was very sparse. It didn't have any percussion, and the percussion, if you listen to it, is pretty out there. It's these huge kind of frenetic stick rim shots, I guess is what you call them. I mean, when I had written it, I knew already that that's what needed to be there, and I sort of thought that this would have to be the first song I released. And I remember saying to the producer I was working with, we have to produce this as if this is the first thing people are going to hear after 5 years. And at that point, you don't know for certain that that's what's going to happen, because the label get involved and say, we want this single, and et cetera, et cetera. No, I really wanted to sort of invite people in with this slow kind of ethereal synth that would be comforting, I think, to some fans, and then have these stick hits that interrupt kind of out of nowhere and are kind of objectively too loud to kind of interrupt and sort of make you suddenly feel not at ease, or confuse you and go, okay, I thought we were getting this thing, but actually we're getting something else. So what are we gonna get? I kind of wanted to kind of trick people, like it's like comfort them and then trick you and be like, we no one knows where we're going from here, which is, I think I'm a bit of a troll sometimes like that, but like a joyful, more of a cheeky bard, I think. The fans will understand, I'm sure. What about the stage? Are you going to be back on the stage later this year, or are there plans for it? So we have 2 shows in Shepherd's Bush in June at Bush Hall. And that's 10th and 11th, and that is frighteningly soon to me, because we're still working out how to do all that. And then hopefully we get to visit other places. But I quite like it because I live in Shepherd's Bush, so it means I can just sort of like... You can walk. I can walk there, and there's a great pizza next door, so I can share that with fans afterwards. Thank you very much, Shura. I Got to Sad for My Friends will be released on the 30th of May.
The show was edited by Elliot Greenfield, and thank you very much for listening.